32. We've cut from 64 down to 32, and now we will get down to the first 8 of the 16 today. We have 8 games on the slate for you. Another edition of Cutting Nets. The madness is upon us. We've got Eric, we've got Gentry, we've got Beho here, and we're going to be discussing these 8 college basketball games on the slate today. We're going to see who makes their way into the Sweet 16. Some exciting games yesterday. Lots of craziness over the couple days, but the one thing that I will notice is we've had some really entertaining games. We've had some games that are down to the wire, but we've had a lot of bad basketball out there. There's been a lot of bad basketball being played. It's funny, and I'm kind of watching a lot of these things. And Eric, I'll kind of sort of throw this to you a little bit because I know you coach basketball too. I'm watching, and I think we're in this weird era where, everything's starting to shift to the 3-point line. We saw it in the NBA a few years ago to where everybody's shooting at a much higher clip. You're just, everybody's got to be having that sort of in their repertoire. And then what ends up happening is because of the 3-point shot, you sort of kind of rely on it a little bit too much and it becomes a crutch. And so some of the fundamentals and some of the basics just sort of go out the window. You just don't see as much cutting, as much screens, as much really smooth offenses being run, as much drives and kicks. You just get a little bit more of deep 3-point shooting. And then some of these games can get ugly when that's the case. Like some of them, when these teams go cold for a little while and they just keep relying on it, and you can tell they don't have these really great fundamentals driven into them.
Yeah, I mean, my personal thing, it starts with the AAU level. I mean, I can go on an hour and a half rant about that, how all these kids, don't get me wrong, Steph Curry is very entertaining, but
yeah,
I will try to be Steph. They just don't understand.
A pattern, right? Yeah. You see that and you try to mimic that, and you don't realize that he's 1 in a billion, right? With what he's able to do and how he does it.
They just don't understand. To me, it comes down, you have a bad shooting night, drive, get fouled, go to the free-throw line, get some rhythm, get some confidence. That's what I try to install in everyone I work with if you're having an off day. But all these kids just want to pull up from the arc and think they're Steph Curry and like dance after they make it. And yeah, it's showing a lot in these games.
Okay, that's my get off my lawn moment. That's how we had to open it up. Get off my lawn.
No, I mean you're right. Eric, you were at the LSU game, right?
No, I was at the Yale
Purdue
game, and Eddie somehow looks softer in person than he does on TV. And then I was at the Texas Va-Tech game.
Well, thank God you didn't watch the LSU Iowa State game. That game was that had to be the worst. I'll give credit to Leo. Leo said they're going to have to repair the backboard from all the dents afterwards, and it
was gross. And we have 8 games to talk about today. There are 3 or 4 games that I'm excited to attack with you fellas. We kick things off this morning with Baylor, North Carolina. And it's funny because Baylor, I was in a fantasy draft for the tournament, and in this fantasy league, it's a players draft. So you pick players, one player, everybody picks six players, and everybody drafts one. You go in snake order, and the Baylor guys were the last of the major teams to go. Nobody wanted the Baylor guys of all the top 4 seeds because I think everybody was worried about them having a deep run. And now you sort of look around and you see the lay of the land, and North Carolina was very impressive, but Baylor still played really, really well. And I guess there's no reason why they can't win a couple games. Now, the more we talk about the ACC, it's funny because the ACC wasn't good this year. But they've won some games in the tournament. Does that mean they were better than we think? Or does that mean they just sort of ran into the right kind of matchups and the right kind of teams? Because when we break each of those games down, North Carolina looked really impressive. I guess Miami and Notre Dame, those games could have very easily flopped the other way. It wasn't like either one of them were all that overly impressive. I'm not sure exactly what to take from this game. Of the games today, this was one of the ones I had the hardest time getting a real feel for. Let's start with you on this one, Gentry. Baylor, North Carolina, total in this game right around 150.
Yeah, well, I look at it like this. I mean, one of North Carolina's biggest problems all season has been consistency from one game to the next. And as great as they looked against Marquette, they could easily turn around as lay an egg against a much better Baylor team today. And it is the defending champs. I mean, they're not going to go down easy either. So it's like, even if it is a tight game, I'd still look for Baylor to, pull it out if it is close, just because of the lack of consistency out of North Carolina. But the 5.5 number is kind of an interesting one, because I don't think, I kind of feel like it's a little high based on if you just went off recency bias with what you've seen with North Carolina in the opener, and even up until the Virginia Tech game in the ACC tournament, they've been playing pretty well on offense. So I think this could swing really either way. It's kind of a coin flip for me.
Yeah, this is just the one that I have the toughest time getting a feel for. Biho, do you have any strong opinion in this North Carolina Baylor game?
Yeah, actually, this is my favorite play of the day.
Nice. Awesome.
Look, guys, I was all over North Carolina against Marquette. I thought that was just a great matchup for North Carolina. This is the complete opposite. This is the nightmare matchup for North Carolina. Baylor's defense, way too good. North Carolina, not consistent enough. That North Carolina played as good as they could have played against Marquette. So let's see what happens when they're not getting easy buckets.
That's what worries me, right? Is that when you win by like 30 like that, you almost don't want to win by 30, right? You almost just sort of want to stop when you're up by like 15. I know you don't want to do that, but like
just
turn it off and just stop hitting those shots, and you save them for later, because you don't next week against Baylor or next game against Baylor, you want some of those close either or shots against this one seed that you maybe didn't need in that game against Marquette, right?
Yeah, and I saw something, a stat while I was doing this last night or something. It was since like 2010, I can't remember how many matchups it was, 1 versus 8 in the second round, but like 69% of those games ended up double-digit games, and only like 2, maybe 3 times did the 8 seed actually win the game. So I'm taking Baylor here. I'm laying. I actually locked it in at 5. I'd still lock it in at 5.5. I would lock it in probably all the way to maybe 6.5 and feel very confident in it. So yeah, give me the Bears. I think they roll.
When Eric, one time when I was, I think 2 or 3 years old, USC in football, this was when USC was pretty good, was playing a game against Baylor. And my mom just sort of jokingly walked into the room, and it was at a point when I think at the moment USC was kind of struggling and underachieving in that game. And she said, "Go Baylor Bears," jokingly to my dad. And my dad just was so mad. I still remember, I think he didn't talk to her for like 2 days. Not even kidding. I'm not joking. He was so, and I still, from this day, every time there's a Baylor game or Baylor's on, I'll just remember that my mom, sticking her head in, "Go Baylor Bears," and my dad just like, "Carol," and it was so funny. So let's talk about today with Baylor and North Carolina. Eric, what do you think about this spot?
Real interesting matchup. Key thing, I really think North Carolina's dominant performance in the first round had to do more with Marquette's issues than what UNC brings to the table. I mean, Baylor, when shooting 47% or better, they're 21-0. So, I mean, that's what it comes down. I am a little worried. UNC has some size. Baylor's without their big. Baylor's only 211th nationally in defensive rebounding. They only go about 6 players deep. UNC is really good at drawing fouls and getting to the free throw line, hitting at a 77% clip. I just really don't trust UNC's defense. I really don't have a play in the game, but for the contest, I did the over 148.5.
The rebounding matchup, right, is key, because Baylor's a very good offensive rebounding team, and North Carolina is one of the best defensive rebounding teams in the country. So that's going to be interesting, because that's like strength on strength. But go ahead, Biho.
Yeah, one thing too that I find interesting, like I'm a big fan of North Carolina's big Baycott. Like I do like him, but I've noticed in the games I've watched with North Carolina too, especially if defenses are really physical with him, he he tends to get a little out of his mind when he goes to the defensive end and gets in foul trouble. It's like if you push on him a little bit when he's on offense, he's going to do the same to you on defense. And if the refs are calling it tight, he could be out of the game. And if he goes out, I think they're in big trouble.
North Carolina, Baylor is our opening game, 12:10 p.m. Eastern time. We've got North Carolina at 25-9, 17-16-1 against the spread, and you've got Baylor 27-6, 17-14-2. Let's see who the first team into the Sweet 16 is, Baylor or North Carolina. That's game 1 on our slate today. Game 2 on the slate, we're getting to Kansas versus Creighton. Kansas around an 11.5 point favorite against Creighton here. Creighton 23-11, 20-14 against the spread. You've got Kansas 29-6, 18-16-1 against the spread. This game will go at 2:40 p.m. Eastern time, and you've got the number 1 seed versus the number 9 seed in the Midwest trying to move on to the Sweet 16 here. So Creighton, in their first matchup, they were able to get by San Diego State, and in diving into that game, they got really lucky. Really lucky. We can be honest. So they were down with 3 minutes and 57 seconds left to go in the first half. They were down 35-21. So they were down by 14. So they were down the entire game a decent amount. Now, to close the game out, 3 minutes and 51 seconds left to go in the game. They're down 9, 62-53. San Diego State turned the ball over 4 times in the last 2 minutes and 27 seconds of the game. Literally 4 times in 2:27. They didn't get off of that 62 number in the last 3 minutes and 57 seconds. If they would have done anything, if they would have just not turned the ball over every time in a row, Creighton would have lost. When I see games like that where the winning team needed 4, 5, 6 things to happen for them just to win, you think one of two things. Maybe they got lucky and maybe this week they'll play a little bit better. But then I dove back into Creighton's recent form, right? Since Nembhard went down February the 23rd, they're 4-4. They're just not that good, honestly. They don't have enough firepower right now. Defensively, they're going to fight you. They're going to battle, but they just don't have enough. They shot 2 of 14 from 3. They turned the ball over 20 times against San Diego State. They won because of San Diego State's meltdown. And, San Diego State shot 10 of 17 from the free throw line, and they only shot 5 of 19 from 3. So Creighton needed a team to melt down late, a team to be terrible from the free throw line, and a team to be terrible from the three-point line, all for them to win and get here into this game. That's another situation where I'm looking at it going, was that more on San Diego State? Yes. And maybe the Mountain West, Beho, wasn't that strong. Maybe there aren't going to be a lot of strongly worded letters around the NCAA about what a fantastic conference that was this year, right?
Yeah, they've been rough. And what you said there was perfect. I mean, not only did they need all of that, then they needed overtime. And look, it's just going to make them more tired. And let's not overlook the fact
that quick turnaround.
They lose Kalkbrenner for the rest of the tournament.
Yeah.
Like he goes down with a knee injury. He's their number 2 guy. He's a big that, is kind of sneaky good.
Yeah.
It was cute, Creighton, but Kansas is going to crush you today. I'm taking Kansas here. I'm laying 11.5 and not feeling one bit afraid of it.
Eric, I don't love laying big numbers. I just couldn't get to the Creighton side on this spot. I would have a tough time playing it. If I were going to lean anyway, it would definitely be Kansas. I just feel like they had a nice, easy game. So many things feel like they're going against Creighton right here. Like, as the gambler in me, this would probably be a time I would like to try to hit Creighton. I don't know if I can get there from the matchup. Can you get there? Can you make a case for Creighton?
I cannot. And just to piggyback what you said, an 80% free throw shooter missed the front end of the 1-on-1 for San Diego State. Look, I'll give credit where credit is due. McDermott, you got these guys who are
absolutely.
I mean, getting them in the second round, huge. I mean, in terms of futures for next year with the guard combos that they'll have, this is a team you want to look into. But for today on this team, I just don't think they have enough firepower. The last 3 games, they're 5 of 43 shooting the 3-pointer.
They're tired too right now. They have no legs, right? Because they don't play. They're not deep. They're undermanned. What ends up happening is with these teams that play, it's not always a coincidence when the teams that play really good defense or really hard defense, they don't shoot great from 3 some days because they got no legs. They're running around playing hard defense. They can't do it on both sides.
And then, their 7-footer, I feel bad for the kid having a great game. National television goes down with a non-contact knee injury. Those are never good to see. But we need to remember David McCormick is the 4th best rebounder in all of college basketball. Creighton's not going to have any answer to keep him off the glass.
Yeah.
I really want to keep Kansas here. I didn't bet the game, but in terms of the contest I'm in, I took Kansas minus the 11.5.
Gentry, finish us up here with some Rock Chalk Jayhawk talk.
Yeah, with the additional loss that Creighton is being forced to take here with the big man going out on top of Nembhard already being out on a short turnaround, I don't like it at all. I agree with everybody here. This stinks of Kansas kind of in a big way. Looking at how Creighton ultimately won that game, basically having it handed to them. That's not going to happen with Kansas. That Kansas is playing for something much greater than just trying to get to the Sweet 16. And if it's a full squad for Creighton, I like them, but it's definitely not, obviously. So I'm taking Kansas too.
Yeah, this is another one of them. Like kind of quietly, this is what they came back for. This is what Abaji came back for, right? This run right here. Yep. You have a couple of these guys that return for the opportunity to make a deep run in the tournament and see if they could win a national championship. And I think Kansas is, all year long, I didn't really know what to do with Kansas. We weren't quite sure how good they were, but so far we got to give a shout out to the Big 12. They've been very impressive so far. And that's not as surprising as, maybe the ACC having some success early, because the Big 12 does have a lot of good teams. We never knew what to do with them because it was chaos. They all could take turns beating each other, but the conference does seem to be stacking up pretty well right now. Creighton, Kansas, we'll see who gets through into the Sweet 16 in Game 2 today. Game 3 takes us to Michigan, Tennessee. Michigan got a victory in the first game of the tournament. It was the opening game on Thursday. They beat Colorado State there. Michigan 18-14 overall, 14-18 against the spread. Michigan, in their last 11 games, they've alternated a win and a loss in every one of them. Win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. They just can't put anything together, but they're still talented enough to sort of bounce back. And it's funny because it felt like what happened in their first game. They played a horrible first half, and then they flipped the switch and played a lot better in the second half there. Then you got Tennessee on the other side. They're 27-7. They're 21-13 against the spread. They're 9-1 in the last 10. Guys, I think they're really kind of flying under the radar right now, Tennessee, when you just sort of look around, because when you talk about the teams from the SEC this year, nobody really talked about Tennessee. The conversation was more about Kentucky and Auburn as sort of the top teams, maybe even Arkansas as a team who overachieved and was pretty good. But Tennessee was just kind of there. They continued to sort of chug along. And when you really break into their metrics, they got blown out by Kentucky on January the 15th, that game when Kentucky scored 107 points and beat them by 30. Since that game, they went 16-2. And their 2 losses came by 1 point at Texas and at Arkansas. They, in their stretch of 16 wins, one of those wins came by 4. One of those wins came by 5. All of the other wins were blowouts. They've been not only winning, they've been beating the shit out of people, honestly. And I think it's been just sort of kind of, pushed aside. And I think they ran into a great matchup. I saw this number at 5, and I jumped all over it. I like Tennessee quite a bit in this spot, and I think we've just seen Michigan go back and forth as being this good bad team, and Tennessee defensively is the second best defense in the country. That's the one thing we talked about the other day, Beho. What always travels?
Defense.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I was on Michigan in round one. I thought they were the more athletic team. They, and watching that game, you said it right, like that first half. But if you watch the game, not only did Michigan just play terrible, Colorado State was kind of out of their mind for a little bit.
That one dude hit like 4 or 5 threes in a row.
And it's really funny. So I have this conversation with Leo at the half. We're talking about other things. He's like, see, I told you Colorado State. And I'm like, well, buddy, there's still a half left. And secondly, like, I'm going to hammer this live line because I just can't imagine Michigan playing as bad and Colorado State playing as good. And, Michigan came back and won the game. The Tennessee Longwood game, I mean, Tennessee was laying 18. And again, I just did Tennessee's guards. I don't like, not just the team gets overlooked. I think their guard play gets overlooked a lot too.
The Chandler Ziegler, when they come in, and then Vescovy, he just sort of, because he's not flashy as the other two guys. So he just sort of, when they come in, they draw more attention, and then it's like, oh, he's open for 3.
Yep, and then it's a bucket going the other way. And another thing I think Tennessee does, that you've already touched on too, is Tennessee cuts to the basket really hard. So again, you got him at 5. That's awesome. I got him at 6.
Yep,
I feel comfortable there.
Should be closer to. I thought this was going to be more like 8.
8, 9. 8 and 9 scares me a little bit, but 6. I think Tennessee handles Michigan today. I'm laying the 6 and going with the Vols here.
Gentry, Tennessee, Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, at first glance, I agree with both of y'all about Tennessee. And the only thing that gives me a little pause is something I've neglected to mention in our first couple games. This is the second game in these new gyms for all these teams. So you got to expect shooting to improve, especially outside shooting. Everybody kind of getting their depth perception and they're, getting a feel for where they're playing. But the problem is, I wanted to take Michigan here because they don't rely on the 3 like a lot of teams do. They only shoot about 19 threes a game compared to most everybody else shooting in the 20s a game. And they still put up about 75 points a game, which is, fairly high. But the problem is their defense. And I just don't think they're defensively as strong as Tennessee. And ultimately, it's going to be a battle of wills on defense. And I think that's where Tennessee holds a significant edge. Even if they're not hitting shots, I think Tennessee's defense will get enough stops to kind of put Michigan away in the second half if it's close.
They've got a little versatility, too, when they were able to bring in Fulkerson, go a little bigger. That guy had an incredible start to the game. Yeah. But then they've got Ziegler, who's sort of that little gnat, like running around, right? Just making things difficult for you.
And Vescovi's been shooting really well. I like Vescovi as a player, but you got to give some credit when it's due, and he's been playing that out of his mind for 10, 12 games.
He reminds me of Manu Ginobili a little bit. It's like he just kind of hangs around. He bangs a 3 because you leave him open. If not, he's making that backdoor cut and getting a layup. It's crazy.
I feel like we should be buddies, like Gino, Nicola, Bacola, Vescovi. It's like we're basically like friends. Eric, finish us up here with this Michigan-Tennessee game. Which way are you leaning?
So the big thing is Tennessee's defense is 15th in turnover rate. And Jones, Michigan's starting point guard, didn't play against Colorado State.
Okay, so I was going to ask you too. Do we know it was a concussion? Do we know? They said it was possible, but the quick turnaround, I'm not sure if we've heard anything more yet. Have you?
Yeah, a little birdie told me he was going to play.
Okay, so that's good information.
So that is going to be an advantage for Michigan. They're going to have experience at the point guard position. They're not going to have a young guy with no experience playing who's not going to be over
early in that game. That was, you could 100% see that was a problem. They were playing like a team without their point guard.
And then you start looking at it. Tennessee, elite defense, they do go through these scoring droughts. Their main thing, like you guys said, is driving, kicking the ball out for the open three. Michigan, believe it or not, is bottom 10 in the nation in allowing open three. So it's actually kind of a strength of their defense. Michigan does hold the rebounding advantage. And the one weakness of the Tennessee's defense, and don't get me wrong, I think it's elite. I think it's one of the better ones in the country, is defending the rim. Michigan has Hunter Dickinson. Michigan, like Gentry said, this is the second game. They're going to get used to the depth perception and the rims and everything. Second half, Michigan shot 57% from the floor and 4-7 from three. I mean, they came out lights out. They couldn't miss. I think that's going to carry over. You're getting your point guard back. You have the advantage in rebounding and scoring in the paint. I was able to get Michigan at +6.5.
Michigan for Eric in Michigan, Tennessee. Let's move along to Providence versus Richmond. So in that Tennessee-Michigan game, we've got a 3-11. Winner of that game will move to the Sweet 16 in the South, and they'll play the winner of the Villanova-Ohio State game. Richmond versus Providence. And this is the game, another game today that I like quite a bit here. And I was on Richmond in game one against Iowa. And that was what was nice about that play is sometimes there are plays where you like one team a lot. Sometimes there are plays where you're maybe fading one spot a lot. And then sometimes there are plays where it's a combination of both. And those are the best plays. Those are the ones that make you feel the most confident because it's like, I want to kind of play against them and I kind of want to play that team. And they all come together. And that's this play for me right here too. Win or lose. If Richmond loses by 20, but I've been wanting to attack Providence so much. I've been looking for the right kind of team. South Dakota State was that type of team too. They just shot so poorly. Yeah. And then there was a stretch early in the first half, and I knew South Dakota State was in trouble because there was like a 6-minute stretch when they were up by 3 points and Providence didn't score at all. I think South Dakota State got one bucket. And that was their chance right then to get up by 10, 12, and to completely flip the game, and they couldn't. And you knew Providence was going to make a run and was going to have at least one or two of those. And South Dakota State just shot really poorly. I think the athleticism of Providence was a bit too much. But now I'm, continuing to dive into Providence and their luck metrics, right? And they caught a really good three-point shooting team again that didn't shoot all that great from three. Some of that was Providence. We'll give them that credit for some good defense there. But, diving into Providence's year, 3 wins in overtime. The 3 games they got canceled this year at Seton Hall, at Creighton, against UConn. Those would have been tough games for them. And then Richmond. And Eric was someone who played Richmond in their conference tournament. And Eric was kind of hitting on the point that this team was supposed to be a lot better this year. Early in the season, they were projected to be one of the better, I guess, mid-major-ish teams, because they had so many players coming back. There are 11 guys on the Richmond team that have played minutes this year, and 7 of them are seniors, and 5 of them are fifth-year seniors or above. So all these guys who weren't going to be NBA players and probably weren't even going to be professional basketball players, they decided to come back to school, probably take 1 or 2 classes, and try to make an NCAA run. And they were disappointing a lot of the season. And it felt like there might have been a time when they all kind of looked around at each other. They lost their last 2 games in a row to Dayton and St. Bonaventure before the A10 tournament. And they kind of looked around at each other, and I think they said, hey, what did we come back for, right? We got another chance. We basically threw this year away. Let's just lock down. Their last 5 games, they're shooting 23.5 free throw attempts per game. And they're shooting 78% from the free throw line. And then on the flip side, they're only allowing 13.2 free throw attempts. So they're getting to the line and they're not fouling. And they're shooting an awesome percentage. They're not turning the ball over, only 9.2 turnovers per game. Their opponents are turning it over twice more than them, over 11 times per game. So they're taking care of the ball. their opponents are shooting only 41% from the field and only 26% from three. So they're locking down on defense. I mean, all of the things that you would have expected from this team earlier in the year, they're doing now in a stretch of 5 games. And in the 5-game stretch, what I really like, they played Iowa and Davidson, 2 of the top 11 offenses in the nation. But they also played Dayton, who was the number 4 ranked defense in the nation. They've literally played teams with completely opposite styles. And they've been able to beat the really good offensive team and teams and the really good defensive team. So I've been extremely impressed with what I've seen from them. I've become a fan of the Spiders now. I love the big man, Grant Golden. I've mentioned that story now 3 or 4 times, the guy that collapsed on the court back. So anytime we can get a chance to mention that, to give this guy a little bit of love for what he's been through. I mean, he had a heart procedure, then he had a medical red shirt. And then he played for 4 years. How many times that guy probably wanted to look in the mirror and quit and say, it's too hard right now. I can't put in more work. But he's here playing on a national stage on a Saturday where everybody's going to be watching him. That's what's so cool about days like today. This is it for a lot of these guys. They're not going to ever be in a spot where they're on TV like this, Eric, in front of everybody else watching them. I think that it is 98% of college athletes don't play in the pros, or basketball players never make it to the pros. So this is it for these guys. You sort of got me onto Richmond a little bit a couple weeks ago, and now I'm going to continue to ride them today because I don't like Providence all that much, and I do really like this Richmond team and what they've been doing now for a nice little sample size. Give me those Spiders. I'm going to be Spider-Man all over the place. Whoa.
The way I look at stuff is, if this was like a regular season game, I'd be on Richmond here. But I really think this is the game where we see their legs kind of go out. This is their 6th game in 9 days. They've played a lot of basketball. Nice. You know, like you said, give credit where credit is due. Exactly. They held opponents to 62.4 points a game since the beginning of the A10 tournament. They held Iowa, which was lights out, to 63 points, 21% from the 3. But I just think that the physicality that Providence is going to bring at them defensively with the tired legs is just going to be too much for them to handle. And I just think they're just going to be too tired. I mean, don't get me wrong. If this is like a Tuesday game, I'd be in on them. And in terms of Providence, they have 9 guys that average over 9 points a game. Richmond likes to shoot the 3 a lot. Providence is actually really good at defending the 3. And Providence is also the 6th most experienced team in all of college basketball, 11-2 in close games. And for my money, if I'm a player, I want to play for Ed Cooley, man. This guy is lights out, one of the most underrated coaches in all of America. I have the Providence -2.5.
Beho, which way are you leaning in this game, Richmond, Providence?
I have been back and forth on this, Gino, probably 50+ times. So
this is a tough game, and it's a 2.5 point spread, right? Providence has been a 4 seed that has been favored by less than 3 points in both games.
Yeah. So what I did here, I went under 134.5. I
can see that
partially because what Eric said. I think legs are tired for Richmond. Again, neither one of these teams likes to just run down the court. Richmond's 191, Providence 276 in adjusted tempo. If you combine their average amount of possessions a game, it's 132.5, which means they're going to need over a point, per possession to get to that number. I'm hoping here there's some sort of drought of, 3 to 5 minutes from one team or both. And I just feel really, really comfortable on that under number. I don't think either team is going to just score exponentially more than they normally do. So, again, I know unders aren't people's favorite thing to play, but I think this is a good spot to try to sneak one in.
Gentry, finish us up here with Providence, Richmond.
Yeah, I've really never been happier to not be a fan of either team, because this game's going to be exhausting to watch if you're a fan of either of them, because Richmond's coming in hot. They've got the upset over Iowa, who was my team. So pretty much ended my bracket on day one in the first 5 hours of competition. And then you got Providence that just finds ways to win. And it's just like, you know, when you think you got Providence in a hole, no, you don't. And it's just, I have a hard time picking a winner in this. I almost agree with Beho about taking the under, but I'm not taking an under because with our luck, this game's going to overtime, and then you're screwed. So, you know, if I had to take one, I'd probably lean on Richmond, just because I've been trying to pick against Providence all season, and you know they do find a lot of ways to win, but they don't always cover. And you know, I feel like the value is Richmond at this point as opposed to taking Providence. So that would be my angle.
4 games down, Richmond 24-12, 18-18 against the spread. And on the other side, you've got Providence 26-5, 18-13 against the spread. As we move to St. Mary's, UCLA, 7:10 p.m. Eastern time. Eric, my friend, most of the time you and I got to say, throughout the NFL season, throughout, you know, a lot of times when we preview games and when we discuss stuff, I mean, I'd say 95% of the time we're on the same side. We kind of have a lot of similar handicapping angles, things that we look at. Today is not one of those days, because today feels like a day, my friend, that I love you, but we are going to be on opposite sides many times. And I think this is going to be another one of them, just sort of knowing how you've approached these two teams the last week or so. So this one, it's, you know, you'll hear me go through numbers, advanced analytics, game recap stuff a lot of the time. This one just comes down for me to not thinking St. Mary's is that good, honestly. They come off of a win where they were awesome. They looked really impressive. And I've all year just not thought they were that great. Defensively, they're fantastic. And this is a game where I locked in the under at 127 right away. As soon as this game popped up, that was my first target, because both of these teams are very good defensively. Both of these teams are just what you can expect from them is sort of smart basketball. They're not going to turn the ball over a whole heck of a lot. They're both very above average in turnovers. UCLA is one of the best in the country in turnover percentage. They're top 5. They just don't make a whole lot of mistakes. So you're not going to get a whole lot of freebies from as far as points in transition and stuff here. And then offensively, you know, UCLA is more efficient, but neither one of these teams is like a lighted up. They're both above average 3-point percentage teams and 3-point shooting teams, but not crazy. So this is a total under for me, but I'm for sure going to play UCLA. They're one of those teams for me, Eric, that I've never liked playing as a big favorite, but in this spot at only 2.5, I'm just kind of looking at this game as like, I'm sort of picking the winner with UCLA, St. Mary's here. And I, you know, continue to knock St. Mary's, but I think the moment I knocked them, they beat Gonzaga that day, and now they're one game away from getting to the Sweet 16 here. UCLA, the one lean in a game that's tight, I feel like UCLA might have an opportunity to have the 2 best players on the court here. And that's what I think in tight game down the stretch, who's going to get a bucket. I feel like I can lean on Hawkes and Juzang a little bit more to go get their own in the mid-range, to go make something happen in what feels like this could be another one of those rock fights. So unless you flipped your mind, I think you're on St. Mary's, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was on here, what day was it? Friday. I gave out Akron plus 13.5 and a straight up win. And Akron, they had one of their worst 3-point shooting nights of the year. They only made 4 threes. They rely heavily on the threes. Basically everything that Akron does offensively, St. Mary's does, but they do it better. A lot of pick and roll, a lot of catch and shoot threes. And that's the 2 weaknesses of the UCLA defense. St. Mary's has a good defensive scheme. They'll take you out of transition, force you to do a lot of isolation at the end of the shot clock, and they don't let you take threes. They force you to take mid-range jumpers. Shot quality has them top half-court defense in the whole country. And in terms of experience, their point guard's like 24 years old. This is like his 7th year playing. I just feel that
both of these guys, Campbell's been around forever for UCLA too. He's like always there.
I just feel that in a half court grind out game, I'm going to take the team that has the better matchups. And it just comes down to everything Akron did against UCLA. St. Mary's does better. I locked them in at +3.
That's the one point where I think we would disagree. Because then for me, when it slows down, I'll take the two guys that I can trust a little bit more one-on-one. I think sort of what you were saying in the flip game against Richmond, in a during the week game, I might like the fact that St. Mary's might be able to run their offense a little bit better. But if it's tight and it slows down, I kind of want the star that I think is proven. And UCLA, it's funny because they're so unimpressive when you watch them. Always. And this was even how they were last year too, because remember, they weren't like good. They were a play-in team last year. They should have lost that first game, Eric, to Michigan State last year in the play-in. And then if they don't, we're probably not talking about UCLA as even a 4 seed in this highly regarded, right? Because that's what ends up happening. You have a good year the year before, and then you're on the radar from everyone. So they are still, as Eric's mentioned a few times, somewhat living off of what they did last year, because we know them as this. But again, all you have to do is win one game and you're right back in the Sweet 16 gentry. And then this UCLA team does have some pretty good wins throughout the year when you dig into them, right? You know, they did win early in the year against Villanova. They have a win against Arizona. They beat USC 2 out of the 3 times that they played them. So a lot of the tough games that were on their schedule, they did kind of what they could, and they did what was in front. They were able to take care of what was in front of them. I'm curious for someone like you with these two teams, because these two West Coast teams play a lot late at night. Do you get a chance to watch St. Mary's and UCLA all that often?
Yeah, I've only seen both of them play a couple of times, but my big takeaway from it is I compare this game for, like, say if and when Murray State would have gotten to play Kentucky, right? This is what they want. This is what they want. This is the game. This is their dream game scenario, getting to play the big traditional powerhouse. You know, St. Mary's getting to play UCLA, Murray State getting to play Kentucky. But the problem is, most of the time, the underdog does play tight. Like they don't play loose and free like you're used to seeing them.
And normally you get a line that's like 10 or 12, right? It's not such a tight, close game.
Yeah, and the reason this line's tight is because of the win over Gonzaga. Like if they didn't beat Gonzaga, this would be a 7-8 point spread.
Well,
I feel a win over Gonzaga
win, and then you add the fact that UCLA looked a little bit lackluster and St. Mary's looked so good. You put those things together, that's probably 2 or 3 more points built in.
Right, and the neutral court too, obviously. But it's, I look at it where I would take the experience in this tournament over the flash in the pan that could be St. Mary's over UCLA, right? I would take UCLA here -2.5, even though I agree with everything Eric said about the metrics for the defense of St. Mary's, and the way they tend to play suggests that they're good enough to beat UCLA. But I just think the pressure on them in this game might be detrimental to them ultimately. So I mean, it's I would take the experience in UCLA just because of all that.
What you said is kind of interesting too, because when we handicap games and when we break things down, there's got to be numbers and then narrative that comes into it too, right? Like you have to, it's the analytics and then the human factor. And what's funny that you were kind of hitting on, and it reminds me something that I was like kind of hearing, some of the Providence players, and I think we've seen some of the players on these higher seeded teams, they're seeing social media, they're seeing and hearing everybody pick these dogs against them and kind of telling them, like, they said, we were the Big East champs and like everybody picked South Dakota State. Like they're literally like, wow, we were talking about this. I think this is kind of another one of those where maybe UCLA comes in and they're kind of like, looking around and hearing a lot about the St. Mary's chatter. I felt like that was something with, in some of the other games where you've got these sexy high mid-major teams that we know these teams so much better now than we did 10 or 15 years ago, right? Because we didn't have all the information. We didn't have ESPNU and ESPN Plus where they were on all the time. We watch these teams all the freaking time now. Houston was pissed that people were really high on UAB yesterday. They said, yeah, we kept hearing about this Jelly Walker guy. We kept hearing, and then you could tell they were pissed about it. They said, we wanted to make sure that Walker wasn't going to beat us. Jelly wasn't. They were like, so it is funny because that narrative comes into play too, Gentry. I'm glad you brought that point up because these guys and these kids still, they see and hear these things, and that gives you an extra little boost sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and in Jelly Walker's defense, though, or
no, defense, stop.
No. That kid got up on the podium at the end of the Conference USA Championship. It was like, we're not scared of anybody. We'll play anybody.
I know.
Whoops. Be careful what you wish for, I mean, I wouldn't get up there and say all that. But.
No. Yeah, you definitely want to be careful. So, St. Mary's, UCLA, Beho, finish us up here with this matchup.
Yeah, it's funny, Gino, just your little talk there about, there's numbers, there's narrative, there's human element. This game for me, again, I went back and forth. I don't even know really how to part of me is like UCLA is just UCLA and St. Mary's is just little old St. Mary's, but you ever get that just gut feeling and you're just like, I can't get away from it, right or wrong. You can't get away from it. That's how I feel about this game. I'm taking St. Mary's. I'm taking the points. I got them at 3 for the contest. I'm not going to play this game in, gambling wise today, but just something in my gut just tells me St. Mary's just has a spot here that they can pull this thing out. And I'd hate not to have them feeling this strongly about it.
We've got St. Mary's at 26-7, 20-10-2 against the spread. UCLA 26-7, 17-15-1 against the spread. We get over to St. Mary's, or we get over to St. Peter's versus Murray State. St. Peter's 20-11, 29-1 against the spread, 9-1 in their last 10. Murray State 31-2 this year, 17-12-1 against the spread, 10-0 in their last 10. And guys, could you believe if you would have just said at the beginning of the year to a Murray State fan, you guys are going to be an 8.5-point favorite in a game to get to the Sweet 16? That is crazy just to put into perspective here. We can have an entire conversation, or you can go subscribe to BTV Bets and hear more on the Kentucky situation with Beho reacting and Beho's significant other reacting there. And I'm sure we'll have shows where we discuss that more in Kentucky. But, I mean, I have a hard time. Obviously, Eric, we want to give St. Peter's a lot of credit for that win over Kentucky. But again, when you're just sort of looking in that game individually, did St. Peter's win the game? Sure. It felt to me more like Kentucky lost that game with the free throws and a lot of the mistakes and a lot of the poor play down the stretch. And then you wonder, for a team like St. Peter's, I mean, that was everything. That win was massive. What are the emotions like just getting here to this point, and then you beat Kentucky? Can you come back and put 2 games together now? I feel like for Murray State, they win. This team wins a lot of games. They probably have a much better sense of feeling like they belong here in this situation. Now, so I don't think I could pick St. Peter's if I was doing my bracket to move along. But from a betting standpoint, is this number one that you can jump in on St. Peter's, Eric? Or, where would you have to get to jump in on St. Peter's? Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on this game.
This is a real interesting matchup for me. And to me, it just comes down to whoever controls the pace. Murray State is one of the fastest teams in the country. They like to get out on a fast break. St. Peter's is 284th in the nation defending the fast break. And what St. Peter's, if this gets a half-court game, what St. Peter's likes to do is put 5 on the perimeter, a lot of back screens, a lot of cuts to the rim. And that's Murray State's weakness. They are 335th defending the paint in the nation. And if this gets into a half-court set, the sets Murray State likes to run, St. Peter's is good defending. So, I mean, I can't get involved just because whoever controls the pace is actually going to win this. I understand what you're saying about St. Peter's. We just beat Kentucky, prime for a letdown and everything. But does Murray State, do they have a little bit of a mental kind of like, oh, we're supposed to play Kentucky, now we're just playing St. Peter's?
Well, and like you said, is it weird when, like what I was saying, that you look up and you're like, wow, we're favored more over this team than we were over a lot of teams in our conference.
Yeah.
That wasn't even that good, right? Like, this is crazy for them to be in this kind of a spot.
St. Peter's has been a covering machine. I think they're like 18-4-2 for the year.
You were hitting on it. St. Peter's, rarely do you see teams like St. Peter's in the smaller conferences. When we reference like the rankings and the numbers and the analytics and stuff, and you think about in college basketball and compare it to like football, right? In football, there's 32 teams. In college basketball, we have 360. So on those numbers and on those metrics, if you're in a smaller conference, most of the time, even if you're good based on that conference, your metrics are in like the hundreds. Just because of who you play, you're never really able to get up all that high. Murray State defense is fine. St. Peter's defense is ranked 32nd in the country. For a small school, that's a very good like metric number for them.
Yeah, I mean, they're lights out. I mean, I couldn't bring myself to play them though. In the contest we have, I played them at +9. But like I said, it just comes down to whoever controls the pace is going to get the win in advance.
Gentry, we saw St. Peter's take down your Kentucky team on what was not a very good first day of the bracket for you with Kentucky and with Iowa. Not a great day. I had Kentucky winning it all too, so not a great day for yours truly. But that again is in the past today from a gambling standpoint. Is there anything about this game you like? You want to attack it? Is this a stay away? Are you just furious at St. Peter's? Where do you stand?
No. I'll give credit to St. Peter's just enough. I mean, yeah, Kentucky ultimately lost that game, but you look at St. Peter's leading up to the focusing on everybody's 10 games, and I'm trying to analyze it based off of that when I did my bracket. And the one takeaway for St. Peter's is they only give up 57 points a game in their last 10. So, I mean, defensively, they're pretty sound. And it kind of showed in flashes, if not necessarily the whole game. I mean, Kentucky was getting ultimately shots they wanted a lot. They just were not hitting anything. And it kind of left the door open. And then on the defensive side, we weren't guarding them. So, that's ultimately how you can lost that game. But, you look at something Eric mentioned, Murray State was probably all jacked up to play Kentucky. And now they get St. Peter's, and St. Peter's is still out there like, we got nothing to lose. I mean, this is house money. Yeah. I kind of like St. Peter's and the points. I don't think they're going to win. But I do think Murray State ultimately wins the game. But I do think St. Peter's is good enough the way they play defense to cover.
St. Peter's, Murray State, B-Ho, where are you leaning in this game?
I'm not playing it money wise. That number is a little large. One thing we've mentioned, you talked about maybe what could be going through the kids' heads emotionally. Obviously, St. Peter's super excited to beat Kentucky. I mean, they're going to be telling their grandkids about it. You know what I'm saying? They probably celebrated a little more than they normally do wins that night. And, it's hard not to. I mean, credit to them. They took down Kentucky, Murray State, on the other hand, look forward to playing Kentucky. Now they don't. Now they've got this team. Could they overlook them? I think if it wasn't for the fact that St. Peter's beat Kentucky, I think you could be onto something there. But I think Murray State's coach is going to be like, look, guys, we can't go into this game overconfident. This team did just beat Kentucky, the team we thought we were going to have to go up against and shock the world. They actually did it. So this team is pretty good. I'm sure they'll point out their defenses. Look, Brown and Williams, they're very good players. And one thing Murray State does and really did in their first round matchup against San Francisco is, they eat the glass. Like, I think they had like 46, 48 rebounds or something the first game, just destroyed San Francisco on the boards, which ultimately cost San Francisco the game. We'll see what happens here. I took Murray State and laid the points for the contest.
We have 2 games remaining to discuss. Before we get into those 2 games, I wanted to show everyone out there the Better Than Vegas Old Smoke Clothing collaboration with this new t-shirt. I don't bet, I win. You can purchase this at oldsmokeclothing.com/BTV. It's $32. And with the promo code GINO, it'll give you free shipping on your order. If you're a fan of us here at Better Than Vegas, if you're someone who watches the content that we do, all of our free stuff, if you'd like to show some support for us, this is the best way to do so. We've just linked up with Old Smoke Clothing, and by purchasing these shirts, you're going to make us look really good. You're going to put a few bucks back in our pocket, and we will really appreciate that. You'll get a great t-shirt out of it. And hey, I had a promotion the other day for one of my followers. Anyone that bought these shirts, I had I think 6 or 7 people that ended up sending it back to me afterwards. And I made $100 win wage. I made $100 future wager for one of the winners on any team they wanted to win the NCAA tournament. They got Arizona at 6-1. So they've got $100 just for buying a $32 shirt. They got the shirt, and they've got $100 now on Arizona at 6-1. For buying this shirt, they could get this shirt and then themselves $600. So not bad at all. Check out Old Smoke Clothing. And Beho, while we're talking details, while we're talking specifics, before we get into those final 2 games, tell us about what else we want to do today at BTV. We want to give away some more money.
Oh, yeah. Leo tried yesterday to give away money, but he didn't. So today it's my turn. Our prop of the day, I forgot to mention it during the game. We're going to give away $250 into somebody's Nitro betting account if St. Mary's covers the 3 points against UCLA. So hopefully whoever we select, we'll put the tweet out after the show. All you're going to have to do is retweet it and make sure you follow us at BTV Bets. And, when the Gales cover, notice I said win, we're going to give away that money to somebody. So
Gales,
we'll see.
Let's get a Gales cover there for the public prop. 2 final games to dissect today. So we've got New Mexico State versus Arkansas. Arkansas around a 6.5-point favorite in this game. Let's see what the current number is at Nitro. Yeah, over under in this one, 138. So, man, Teddy Allen. Whoo! This dude, I'll tell you, he may be the swaggiest guy in the whole tournament. This dude will jump on the table. He will bump his chest, and he will tell you about it right afterward. This guy, he's fun to watch, and he was nailing some shots against UConn. Eric sniffed this game out. That was a good call on him. And to be honest, it was some real stupid play by UConn, and they kept fouling him deep, right? Like, I know it's hard. You're trying to defend the guy, and you want to make it tough on him, but they kept 3-point shot fouls and ones, giving him extra opportunities. I love when players like this get hot in the tournament. This could be, if this game is close late, think about how fun it could be with him and Note kind of going at each other late. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping with like 5 minutes left to go in this game, it's like a 5-point game, because I'd love to see these two guys going at each other. I mean, I don't know this, but Note comes off like a sausage. Doesn't, at least from like, did you see what he did the other day, like last week when he took that shot late after that game, like he scored that extra bucket for no reason, and he's always just kind of cheap shot and just do it. I don't know. Something about it just kind of bothers me, the way he sort of carries himself.
You're not suggesting Arkansas embellishes at times.
No, maybe. The one thing that stood out to me about their game in the Arkansas game against Vermont. So there was one little stretch that I think really changed the game. It was tied 27-27 with 1 minute and 48 seconds left to go in the first half. So Vermont's probably feeling really good about themselves right there. Good half. You're about to go into the half tied. Well, Arkansas scored 7 points in the final minute 48 there. And all of a sudden, instead of going into the locker room tied, now Vermont was down 7. And that really changed everything for them. Vermont only shot 10 for 17 from the free throw line, and Arkansas shot 20 for 25 from the free throw line. That was the complete difference in the game right there, Beho. This is another team that I've been trying to kind of target for a while in playing against Arkansas. And I don't know if New Mexico State can win this game because Arkansas has one of those they're very Providence-y in that they've just got a knack in these late games for like finding a way. The ball sort of bounce. They're like the team that you play great defense on Arkansas. They take a bad shot and then a rebound caroms off of someone else's hand back to their guy and they get a reset. Like that's the way things happen for them, And so once it happens over and over, you get to a point where you're like, damn, maybe it is this team. I still think they probably win, but I'm going to play New Mexico State at plus the 6.5. I think they can keep this game close enough. Which way do you go in this game?
So I think you mentioned something that's going to be a key, but not maybe for the reason you're thinking. And that's the Allen kid and his boisterous behavior. It seems to me when somebody wants to do that against Arkansas, it only encourages Arkansas to do that. Sure. And like, look, you don't want to light a fire, don't give them something that they can focus on as far as I want to beat this team even more than I do normally. Sure. And dude pounding his chest and flexing and all that nonsense, that's only going to make Arkansas do it, and their crowd's going to be bigger. They're going to be more into it when their guys start doing it because Arkansas will give it right back to you, and they'll start running their lip and flexing on you, and that crowd's going to get into it. Again, we've kind of been on opposite sides of Arkansas a lot. I like Arkansas here. I laid the 6.5. And again, do I feel great about it? Nah, not really, but I was comfortable enough to play it.
Eric, you were on New Mexico State the other night. Are you going to continue to roll with them?
One of the big things I look at after a team has an upset is how they react post-game. New Mexico State, that was their Super Bowl. I really think that they're going to lose here. And the reason is because they're 300th in the nation in turning over the ball. And with the way Arkansas plays defense, they're going to be forcing a lot of turnovers. Arkansas's top 50 in turnover rate caused on defense. So I think it's just a great matchup. They're going to be able to cause a lot of turnovers and force New Mexico to get out of that slow pace that they like to go against. It was just a great matchup in the first round because UConn doesn't like to run. New Mexico State doesn't like to run. I feel with how Arkansas plays defense, they're going to make New Mexico State uncomfortable, play a little bit faster. I was actually able to find it at 6. I lacked Arkansas in at -6.
And what's funny is the two teams that I thought got really lucky throughout a lot of the year, they got lucky again in the brackets. Providence and Arkansas. Like, look at the way things drew for both of them. Providence caught a South Dakota State team that was good, but then beating them, now they catch Richmond. So they, in their first 2 games to get to the Sweet 16, they played double-digit seeds. They didn't even have to play the 5 seed. And then for Arkansas, the same thing happened. For Arkansas, they're gonna have a very likely trip to the Sweet 16, and they played a team against Vermont who shot horrible from the free throw line, and they play a New Mexico State team who's not a top-seeded team. So it's going to be really frustrating for these teams again who seem like they've been getting lucky for a lot to sort of be get the benefit of the doubt in their spot, in their situation. Gentry, finish up this game, Arkansas, New Mexico State.
Well, to kind of follow some of the things Brian was saying about, you don't want to poke the bear, right? Arkansas loves to give it out just as much as anybody. So trying to give it to them, you're not going to beat them playing their own game, so to speak. So it's, I felt like Vermont had a great chance to get Arkansas because, Vermont doesn't have any of that. And Vermont's a relative unknown, for a lot of these kids at Arkansas. It's like, well, it's the American East champ, who the hell are they? But Vermont was actually a pretty good team. They just had a bad shooting night. And it's Arkansas lucky that happened.
Yeah.
Now, New Mexico State beating Connecticut, I wouldn't go so far as to say that's their Super Bowl. I mean, they beat Connecticut up in, where are they playing? Buffalo? And that where they're at? I didn't think Connecticut was all that all season. So I wouldn't call it as big an upset as everybody else is, even though going by the seeds, it's an upset.
And I agree with you, Gentry, in that and even the betting lines didn't think it was that big of an upset.
Yeah.
I think what Eric was pointing out was more of just how Allen was acting, after, and like how he was like, literally acting like he just won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but you do that during a game against an Arkansas team, and they're gonna they're gonna try to make you look bad. And I still would possibly take New Mexico State here with the points, but I do think Arkansas is going to somehow find a way to escape again, kind of like what they did against Vermont.
Honestly, guys, I have no real opinion in this last game. I just can't get a feel for it. In this like 4 or 5 of the games today, I've got a pretty strong opinion for. There's 1 or 2. I have no clue really what to think here in this game because for Memphis, I get nervous about them with their turnovers, and that's what scares me against a team like Gonzaga. Like I could see Memphis playing athletically with Gonzaga for a lot of this game, and then boom, those 1 or 2 stretches where Gonzaga starts to go. And how about Holmgren like stepping out and playing that one play where he like got the steal and then he goes coast to coast and throws it down? It's like, oh my goodness, like, whoo, he's lanky and he's just kind of crazy to watch because he's so different looking and he does a lot of different things than other players. I'm really intrigued by this game, and from just I want to watch it because Memphis has played very well for a good stretch of time now, and Gonzaga is Gonzaga, but Gonzaga doesn't run into the type of athletes game in, game out that Memphis has, right? Memphis has some legitimate athletes. I don't know if Gonzaga has to deal with those, in their conference over and over again. So Eric, final game on our Saturday slate, Gonzaga, a double-digit favorite against Memphis Memphis was a 9 or they were an 8? They were a 9, right? In the 1-9 matchup?
Yeah, they're a 9. Real interesting game. You had the turnover issue. The only thing is Gonzaga really doesn't force other turnovers. So, I mean, I really don't think they're going to make –
They have like a pressing defense. They're just kind of big and long. It's just weird. Which is like kind of how like USC was. They don't really get after you. They're just sort of long and tough to shoot over.
And the way when Memphis really struggles on offense, per shot quality, they really struggle in the half court sets. But Gonzaga is going to look to get out and run, and that's when Memphis thrives, when they're able to go be athletic, get out and run and everything. They have a big that's going to be able, in Durant, who's going to be a top pick in the top 10 pick in the NBA draft, who's going to be able to combat the size of Timmy and Holmgren down below. And we saw Zags really struggle when their bigs aren't be able to generate offense. You have to rely on their guards. The score against Georgia State is a little askewed because one of their bigs went out. This is the most athletic team the Zags will face. And everyone seems to be forgetting when you look at Memphis and offensive rebounding, they're the 5th best offensive rebounding team in the country. I like Memphis here. I locked them in at 10.
Yeah, I don't know if I could lay with Gonzaga. You were hitting on something that I think is a great point. This Gonzaga team, Gentry, doesn't quite have the same type of perimeter guard play that some of the previous Gonzaga teams have had. So if you get into a close game down the stretch, you got to make sure it's harder to get the big guys the ball, right? Where some of the other teams with the better guard play, you sort of know what you're going to get from them. So this isn't like a different built Gonzaga team.
Yeah, I was looking at this game, and you really just touched on it. It comes down to 2 things. It comes into foul trouble for Memphis's bigs, and then the play of Gonzaga's guards. Because if Gonzaga's guards can hold up against the speed and athleticism of Memphis's, then I like the chances. I like the chances because you got 2 big guys that can really score and do things in Timmy and Holmgren. Whereas Memphis, you got Duran. And he's nice, but Williams is more of a defensive guy. He's not gonna score on you. So if you can just limit Memphis's guards and get some production points wise out of Gonzaga's guards, I think they're a lock here. But the number is interesting. The 10.5 is, as well as Memphis has been playing. That's a tricky number. I would almost look at possibly playing the the over here as big as it is, because both these teams want to, score in transition. Gonzaga does make the open three more than Memphis does, but I kind of feel like Memphis will try to play more of a perimeter game today, just based on the size of Gonzaga. And if they're hitting shots from outside, then that would kind of boost the scoring. So I would kind of look at the over as well.
Memphis 22-10, 16-15-1 against the spread. Gonzaga 27-3, 14-13-3 against the spread. Beho, we are now under an hour away from our first game tip-off this morning of North Carolina Baylor. Finish us off here with Memphis Gonzaga.
I'm like you. I really don't have an opinion either way. I'm not going to play this game gambling-wise. I'm just not going to doubt Gonzaga right now. I'm taking them. I'm laying the 10 points in the contest.
Short, sweet, concise from Beho. Fellas, this was another fantastic show. I look forward to diving into the other 8 games tomorrow. So we'll know the first 8 spots in the Sweet 16 at the end of today. Tomorrow, we'll fill out the other spots in the Sweet 16. Gentry, good luck to you, my friend. Eric, good luck to you and all your wagers. Beho, hope you have a fantastic day. Don't forget, everyone, flip those notifications on for BTV Bets. That way, anytime we go live, you will be notified. We'll be back here with you tomorrow morning, again, 10 a.m. Eastern time. Then we'll figure out the schedule for next week. I'm not sure if, because the games aren't as early, we may not go as early. We'll play it by ear. We wanted to make sure this week we got everything in for you before all these games started. So good luck. March Madness will be down to 16 teams after tomorrow. And let's see, a lot of other BTV content coming up today, tomorrow. Tomorrow you'll have you'll have us in the morning. You'll have NBA with myself, with Eric, with Kyle. You'll have the backdoor cover.